Hi, here is ZAPY speaking. Do you remember we mentioned about comedian being one of the best speakers in our society? So we have been doing this comparison video for a while now. So one day, Aaron and me were just talking. We said, "Oh, why don't we compare comedian with comedian? See which one is better." And the good thing is, in this era, these comedians talk more or less the same thing. For example, they all make fun of Trump, so that's easy to find. And then if you remember on last weekend, there's the first Trump rally. It didn't go as well. So we find two clips from two comedians who are the late night hosts talk about their commentary on the rally. So today with me is Aaron, and he will accompany watching this video and provide some comments. Do you have some overarching statement to make before we go into the details? Like key message you want to talk to our audience?
I mean, we're looking at the difference between how much information we can pack into a moment and how easy it is to transmit that information. But I think it's probably easier if we just jump in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just for the fans out there, we don't pick side. We just analyze the speech from a technical point. They are all great comedians. Let's see who they are. So first one up is Seth Meyers. So he's talking about this Trump rally. We'll play around 30 seconds of the clip. See what he has to say.
I've seen less empty seats at an improv show, and let's be honest, Trump's rallies are basically an improv show where he gives himself his own suggestion. Could I have the name of a famous person? I heard Hillary. The arena wasn't even 1/3 full. Trump staked his political fortunes and his ego in this rally, and it was such a flop, they even had to cancel a planned second speech to what they thought would be an overflow crowd outside before Trump had landed. Crews were literally breaking down the stage because so few people were there. Wow, he's the president of the United States, and they're treating him like the least popular band at Coachella. Sorry, bro, I guess everybody went over to see Beyonce. You can keep the lanyards if you want. What kind of music do you guys do? Rage rap?
So that's the around 30-second clip from Seth Meyers. I talk about the rallies not being that big as what Trump expected. Let's hear from Aaron about how he performed.
Yeah, I think Seth Meyers. I think both Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, anyone who's running a talk show generally needs to be a good speaker in some sense. Seth Meyers delivers a lot of information really quickly. He speaks super fast. He speaks faster online than he does in his actual live show. In his actual normal show where he's in person with a live audience, he speaks way faster. There's probably a number of reasons why. One being he just doesn't pause for jokes because normally he has to pause for laughter and stuff. But he speaks really fast. So that means he gets a really high information density. A lot of ideas are crammed down into a small space. And you'll notice even if you look at the lengths of the videos, the next video we'll watch, which is about roughly the same stuff and has about the same amount of ideas in it, it's almost double the length. Maybe it's about another 2/3 the length. But it's the same information because of how fast Seth Meyers speaks. The other thing he does is he's like really intense on the camera. He's got his eyes open really wide, and that you might think he also has big eyes, which helps. But his eyes are open really wide. His shoulders are pointed directly at the camera. His eyes are directly on the camera. And when he's speaking to us, it's kind of like this. It's an address to us, which makes it feel super intense. So he's transmitting a ton of information in a very intense way to the camera. So it's an interesting thing to see. I don't know if I necessarily think it's the best way of doing something, but he's also the one making millions of dollars, so I really can't comment too much.
Okay, to distill the key points from Aaron's commentary here, Aaron touched on two big points here. First is information density, and second is information transmission. But neither of these directly affect how much information the audience takes in. So as a comparison, where I want to demonstrate this point, I will show the other comedian. His information density is a bit lower, but his transmission is more dynamic. And you can see if you can soak in the information a bit better or not. So let's go to our second video here. And that is from Nation Steve Colbert. So talk about same Trump rally is around Okay, so this one is from Colbert, and so you can see the content is almost the same. They talk about the same rally and same even footage about they take off the second stage. Let's hear from the dissection from Aaron here of how is Colbert doing.
Yeah, so first, just to compare the things we already said. So I'll actually add some extra stuff in here, but to compare one of the things I already talked about, you'll notice that he's on an angle comparatively. He's kind of leaning into it. And I think, I'm assuming, and I don't know for sure, I think that was a conscious choice that that Stephen Colbert or his production team made to make it a little bit less like in your face direct, because this feels really intense, as I mentioned before, and this feels a bit more kind of casual, like we're all sitting together. I've got one arm over the back of my chair. I'm relaxed. So that was one thing they did. That's one difference between the two speakers, where Seth Meyers is kind of like, whereas Stephen Colbert is a little on an angle. He's still looking at us. He's still facing us mostly, but he's on a bit of an angle. It's an interesting difference to see. Now, I think in terms of the information transmission, I think Stephen Colbert is much more focused on it. The clip was, I don't know exactly, around 20 seconds longer, at least, maybe more than that. And a lot of it is pausing or repetitions or making our voice different. So when he says 25 people, 25 people, he makes his voice higher. He spends more time on it. He's repeating the idea. He pauses after. And this means that we as an audience, one, if we're pausing more, we have more time to process it. Two, if he's changing his voice, it's going to hold our attention and emphasize words more, so we're more focused on that transmission. And three, when he does say so we've got pausing more, change voice. When he repeats it, it's more likely to get hammered into our head. So he uses a lot of different ways of making sure we learn it. The consequence being it takes longer, but I'd argue there's better transmission of the information. We're more likely to actually take it in and retain it because of that extra effort put in. There's a balance to be struck between these two things. If you have too high of information density, you lose people. If someone starts screaming a bunch of really complex polysyllabic words at you that have a lot of information, you're going to lose most of it. You're not going to get, in fact, you might not get any of it. However, if we focus too much on information transmission and your information density gets too low, because by virtue of adding in pauses and repetition, the information density is going to drop down. It could end up either being boring or it could seem like it has no point. And that's a balance you have to strike. Personally, I think Stephen Colbert finds a better midpoint here. Because he still has a lot of his pauses in, he still has a lot of those things that help me to retain it. Granted, they both do an excellent job. They both get it across. They're both funny. So it's a tough comparison, but I do think Stephen Colbert does a slightly better job.
Yes, I think everyone do a really thorough analysis in this regard. It's like in the energy density and energy transmission, but that's a bit different though. In energy transmission, if the energy density is high, we talk about electricity, then the transmission is more efficient. I think speech work in the other way. But that could be a trade-off, but I believe a fully seasoned and fully trained speaker are able to find the midpoint balance. That's up to us. And that's feeding a lot about speech content, organization, and delivery. And that's the 3 points today. Content, organization, delivery, called what we use to grade these 2 speakers. So for each section, we will grade of out of 10, and then we will do an average. So let me get my pens and pencil. I will do the average calculation at the end. I will write it down. So hold on a second here.
He's doing math. This is intense.
Yeah, doing math. That's my mind math.
Gosh,
okay.
Scary.
Yeah, I better not make a mistake. Okay, so now it's Colbert with that. Okay, so from Aaron, how will you call it? Call method.
So Seth first called. In terms of content, like because of the information density, and he is still focused on the idea pretty consistently. So in terms of content, 8. The organization of it, I think solid organization. Like we're only looking at a small chunk of an overarching piece, so it's harder to say. But due to the lack of repetition of ideas, I think it'd be a little lower than that. It'd be 6.5. We'll go 6.5. Or do you need me to do whole numbers so I'm not being too mean to your math here?
Yeah, that will probably help a little bit.
All right, I'll give him a 7. I'll be nice. So I said content 8, organization 7, delivery. I would probably actually do 6. It's not bad, but he goes too fast. He never lets his jokes sink in. To me, comedy is a huge portion timing. So 8.76, and then for Colbert, I guess what would that be? I guess that's an average of 7. That's easy. But for Colbert, his content, he's got repetitions and stuff that I include that more organization. He does a good job of it. I would put him at the content would be a 7. His organization and delivery would both be an 8.
Both be an 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're getting what? 7.5 is the average or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm not the math.
I think be higher than, I think 7.75.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, that's actually very similar. Colbert 7.75 and Seth is 7 points. Okay, so now it's my turn. I will give them both score for the content, to be honest. I think they're more or less the same. So then I will give them 8 out of 8 for both. Organization, I think the Colbert and the pause help a lot in terms of organization. So I will give Colbert a bit higher point. So I give him an 8. I'll give Seth a 6. I think he's too fast. And I find my attention drift in his speech. So I give him a bit lower points. Delivery here, Colbert is just amazing. I will give him a 9 actually. It's pretty good. Seth's delivery, I'll give him 7. Not too many. So then I end up give Seth 7 points as well, and give Colbert, I think 8.25. So both of us all end up giving the highest score to Colbert, and our absolute difference between Aaron and me is 0.5. So I gave Colbert a 0.5 higher points. So I would say we have a good consent in this regard, who's doing a better job to balance this information transition and information density here. Just to clarify, this score is not saying who's a better comedian. That's a personal choice. We just analyze the speech content here.
Well, I'm sure there are people who think that Seth Meyers is a better speaker, but it doesn't matter. That's what we think. So whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So that is great. I think that's a good wrap up, and we have a score system, and we have comparison from these comedians, and then we actually set out to be a format for our channel for a while now. So hope you will come back and check in to how this will go. So we'll have a big surprise for you in the fall, and maybe a Christmas present for you. Anyway, so here is ZAPY Speaking. We're looking forward to see you next time.
See ya.